Howdy y'all, I'm Jacob, and welcome back to the ranch. We got two big things we've got to knock out this weekend. One, being we've got to finish up the chicken coop. And two, the east pasture where we've got the goat herd moving through. We're entering a portion of that pasture that's particularly wooded, and there's a lot of cactus buildup. So I need to get the tractor out there and get some grubbing done and get some of the trees pushed up out of the way and get some more shredding done so that we've got a clear lane to take the goats through. That'll just make it easier so that we're not eating up so much time in the evenings whenever we have to move them. So of all the things we get done, those two are probably going to be the highest priority. But the chores never stop either, so there's probably going to be plenty of that going on as well. But I'm killing time this morning, so let's get going. I'm up here in the goat pasture this morning. I needed to check the fence. I noticed last night when we were feeding the calves that number 10 had some abrasions and sores on her back legs. Looked like maybe she had gotten into the fence and gotten stuck and wore her hide through just a little bit. And from last week, that was the calf that jumped the fence and got into the front pasture. So I'm up here checking the fence line. I've already checked the power on it, and it's still pretty strong, so I don't think we've got any of the fence down, but I want to just double check the perimeter, make sure it's good, and then also check on the calves, see how they're doing. Well, over on the far north side, it looks like we do have at least one wire down. Let's see if I can get this fixed real quick. And I did find the calves over here trying to find some shade in some of this beat up cedar. Alright, let's see if we can knock this out real quick. One of the nice things about having a strong charger, I checked the charge on this fence, and I'm going to do it again real quick just to double check. Yeah, running about 5,600 volts on it. So it's still plenty strong even with having a wire on the ground. Let me get this shut off. Actually, let's see if I've got a jumper. Nope, I didn't bring one. Well, that's real smart, Jacob. So I've really got two ways to kill power. What are you doing, girlie? Are you curious of what I'm doing? Boop. I don't think she appreciated me booping her boop. Alright, back to work. So I've got two ways to kill power on this. Normally I have a jumper, and what I'll do is I'll hook onto the hot wire, and then this is a neutral wire that runs the entire perimeter. So I'll hook the hot wire up to this ground, and that'll short it, and you're usually free to work on any live wires, but I didn't bring a jumper with me. So I've also got the electric fence hooked up to a smart plug, so I can go in if it's connected. So I can go in and turn the fence off that way. It's not always the most ideal because I don't always have good wireless connectivity, but when I do, it works fairly well. Oh, well, that's not gonna work. I really should empty out the broken insulators in my bag. it back on. And check it's working. Yep, so that took us didn't change much. Was it 5,600 earlier, and now it's 58. But every little bit counts. I guess while I'm up here, I can kind of talk you through some of the positive impacts that goats have had up here. And of course, the calves are probably going to follow us around, but we'll see if we can get our work done in spite of them. So this pasture, I'm not entirely sure on the exact size, but it's on a really rocky portion. So it's a high portion of the property, and the ground itself is mostly caliche. You do have portions of it that has good dirt, but the vast majority of it's caliche, and it doesn't grow just a whole lot of forage real well. So we put the goats up here because of the type of forage that's out here. You had a lot of trees, well, a lot of cedars or juniper, depending on where you're from, and then a lot of mesquite and a lot of sand drop seed grass. So we put the goats up here because we figured that they'd be able to have a good impact on it. And this has been the result that they've had on the cedar trees. And I've got a short clip on the east side where they haven't been. You can see just how thick the cedars are. This area was exactly the same way. And the goats have come in, they strip the bark off these trees, as well as eat the berries. And they'll eat some of the leafy material, but not just a whole lot. But it's been really nice to see them have this effect, because these trees are horrible about robbing moisture out of the soil, so you don't get just a whole lot of good forage growth once they start invading. And I think I know when we put this perimeter fence in, it was back in one of our really, really rough droughts, so it had to have been 18 or 20-ish time frame when we put all this in. But it definitely makes a nice spot for the goats. It's one of the more robust fences, that's why we put the calves out here. But because of the lack of forage, I went ahead and put a round bell out for them so that they would have food. And I guess they are going to follow me. It took them a little bit. We're a little less than a full week from moving them out here to start their weaning, and it took them a little bit to calm down and to stop bawling all the time, but I think we're reaching the point that we're going to be able to start taming them down pretty easily. I guess that was number 9 that had the wear on her legs. I was thinking it was 10. Alright, I'm going to finish checking the fence. It's looking mostly good, but I'm just going to finish this one little stretch, and then we've got more chores I need to knock out this morning, and then hopefully get started on either the chicken coop or getting the pasture taken care of. messed up yesterday. I don't normally haul water in the mornings. I try to time it so that I'm doing it in the evenings when I'm doing my checks or when we're moving the animals. But I forgot I needed to water yesterday. So by the time I got out here, it was too late to get the tote set up or filled up. So now I'm doing it in the morning. Water taken care of for the next few days, and I think Boss Lady's back from the feed store, so I'm gonna head back over to the house and help her get unloaded. And I'm kind of thinking I may just jump in the tractor to get to work on the pasture. We've got to get a good bit of clearing done so that we have room to move the goats through here. We're getting about to the end of the cleared area in this field, so I think I'm going to start on that and then maybe get to the chicken coop tomorrow, but we'll see. Back over here in the east pasture now. I want to kind of step you through what we're looking at and what I'm planning on trying to fix as we bring the goats through. As you can see down there is where the sheep and the goats are currently, and they're coming in this direction. So the problem we're going to run into is that we have this little grove right here that's fairly densely wooded. And you can see we've been out here in the past grubbing, so we've got a bunch of piles of trees in here that are going to be in the way. And then the other concern is that the cactus in here have just run amok. So what I want to do is I want to get in here and clear out some of these smaller trees that I can with the tractor. I won't be able to get the big ones because the tap roots on mesquites are just far too extensive for the tractor to be able to effectively grub. So I'm going to try and get the smaller trees that I can grub, and then I'll shred what I can't, and then hopefully get some of this cactus pushed into the piles with the trees and get it out of the way. I don't want to disturb the grass any more than I absolutely have to, but there are some areas that I'm going to end up having to shred just because it's going to be too dense for us to get that electric netting in through here, which is one of the downsides of using netting. Ooh, mouse. Alright, I got two other spots I want to show you, and then we'll get to work. We're now up here on the north side of the east pasture, and I don't know how well you can tell, but in this portion of the pasture there's a significant berm that runs east-west all along the north side. And what I think this was is where the old fence line used to be before they resurveyed the property, I want to say late 80s, early 90s, and ended up correcting the fence line and moving it north. But the issue that we have here is all along this berm is nothing but paddle cactus. I mean, there is a lot of grass growing up, but you can't get to it because of the cactus. So this is another area I'm going to focus on because we've gotten to the point that we're not taking the goats any further north in this area because it's too hard on that netting. And we found a bumblebee nest over on the eastern portion of this little stretch the last time we passed through here, and they didn't appreciate us driving the post of that net fencing in here. So I'm going to come in here and see if I can grub some of this and mow it off and set this cactus back, and hopefully it'll die off and the grass will take over. The one last thing I want to show you is a bit of an update on the trees that we tagged that the goats had chewed up. I want to show you all how they're progressing. So here's a couple shots of the effect the goats had on several of the mesquite trees that they passed through here. They came through this portion of the pasture roughly 2.5, 3 weeks ago. And you can definitely tell those trees that they were able to debark and that I did not mow are definitely suffering. The leaves are starting to brown and die off, and there's not any new regrowth on the limbs or at the base of the root ball, which is a really good sign. The downside is there are a couple of the trees that they debarked but then I shredded, and those are showing some decent regrowth down at the root ball, basically coming up out of the ground. So I'm gonna let this keep going, but at least in the early stages it's looking like shredding them did not help them, whereas letting them stand after the goats debarked them is really having a pretty good effect on them. Alright, I'm gonna jump in the tractor and get to work because I am burning through daylight. Howdy y'all, Future Jacob here. In editing the video, I noticed that I didn't really have a good wrap up of the work we did in the East Pasture. And with all the talking past me did, the video started running long. So I thought I'd come out here and give y'all a quick update on the work we were able to get done. So we're at the end of the first day of having the herd out in this area of the pasture that we worked on. they're getting a good bit of work in already. I want to show you some of the issues I ran into in trying to grub these mesquites. So if you're not familiar, mesquites have a fairly substantial root system to them, and it makes grubbing them without the right equipment pretty difficult. And you can kind of see this is one of the larger trees out here, but with the wide bucket on the tractor and not being able to really dig, about all I could do was break it off at the ground. And the downside of that is the stump is just going to go nuts with regrowing limbs and offshoots from it. The big issue I ran into, aside from just having to deal with the large trees, is that with as dry as it's been, the ground has turned really hard. So I was really working to not dig down into it because I didn't want to disrupt a lot of the grasses that are out here. So unfortunately, the result of that is a lot of the trees I was able to work on just broke off at the ground. So I stopped doing that and ended up just pushing up the stuff that we had grubbed in the past, as well as some of the cactus that was out here. And then what I'll do either late this fall or early winter is we'll get an excavator rented and I'll be able to come out and actually dig up the stumps that I worked on. So aside from the little bit of grubbing and gathering I was able to do, we did get the previous area the goats have been in shredded. I was debating on whether or not to do that with as dry as it's been, but decided to go ahead and take a chance and ended up mowing all this down. You can definitely tell a difference between this area and about 3 moves ago when we were getting a lot of good moisture. The grasses over on that far side grew back a lot better than what this most recent area has been doing. But there is still some growth, so I'm hoping here in the near term we'll be able to get some more moisture that will help kick some more growth into gear in the areas that we've been in. Everyone out here seems to be doing pretty good. We've been pulling fecal samples off a couple of the goats out here that we've been kind of concerned about after we did that worming a few weeks ago. And for the most part, most of them have been coming back with a really light worm load, so the worming that we did do really had a really positive effect. However, there are 2, I'm not seeing them right here close by. There are 2 that still have an elevated worm load, so I think we're going to try and get them wormed again here shortly. Well, y'all, all in all, this rotational grazing experiment we've been doing has been going pretty well. We did get off to a rocky start, but I think a lot of that is because we waited so long getting the goats out of the pasture that they were in for a long time. And as wet as this spring and early summer was, most of the people around us that we've talked to have also been dealing with a heavy worm load just like we did. I think having them out in this rotation has helped them, and we're definitely learning a lot from it, so definitely a worthwhile experiment. We still have a good ways to go. I think we still can probably reach another 30 days out here. It'll be tight. A lot of it's going to depend on how we get through more of the brushy area of this pasture and how much they're able to take off of it. I am looking and considering adding a molasses bucket out here, both for the goats and for the sheep, I am kind of concerned because as dry as it has been, most of this is more like dried hay than it is good pasture grasses. So I'm wondering whether or not they're going to need that extra nutrition to get them through. Well, y'all, I think I've drawn out this video pretty long just in dealing with this east pasture from this past weekend. So I think I'm going to end it here. However, I am going to go ahead and release an extra video this week, probably either late Friday or early Saturday morning, because we did get a good amount of work done on the chicken coop, and I want to make sure I get that out for y'all. So stay tuned, and hopefully I'll have that out quickly. Why are you staring at me? Thank y'all for coming along, and I hope to see y'all next time. Wag Ranch. You're creeping me out, man. I think I'm winning them over. Hey, watch the fingers. That one's still suspicious.